Can you do a successful solo podcast? Well, the answer is yes, you can. And I'll go into why. But podcasting, last 10 years, extremely popular. Lots of people hopping on this audio train and just creating content nonstop. And it's easy. You just need a microphone and hit record and boom, you've got a podcast. So the barrier to entry is very low. Anyone can do this. So the question is, are solo podcasts popular? Is that something that people would maybe want to check out? And really, yes, the answer is yes. And I'll tell you why. First of all, everyone's doing interview format podcasts. That's a very common thing where it's like one-on-one and you're having a conversation with someone. It's very, very common that people are producing at high volume that kind of content. But there is the niche being able to create solo podcasts. And now the advantage here is that you can pump out way more solo podcasts than, say, an interview style podcast. Because, well, you don't have to depend on others for interviews. You can literally just hop on that microphone and hit record. And you really have that more creative freedom because you don't have to depend on others. So there's plenty of potential for one-to-camera conversations. Yeah, I'm creating this concept. It's one-to-camera. Typically, you see one-on-one, and those are great. The dialogue's fantastic. It's engaging, right? You have back and forth between two people. Those are perfectly fine. If you have the ability to produce something like that, go for it. There's nothing wrong with that. But the big question here is, well, can you do a solo podcast if you really want to? And yes. Now, is it going to get as much traction as, say, one-on-one? No. And here's why. At least from what I see so far. You see, one-on-one, you can have the person you're interviewing share that podcast. Whereas solo, you have to do all the marketing yourself. You have to tell people you exist. So that's where things like keywords and the names of the title, the tags, like it's all very critical to get noticed. So you do have to put a lot more effort in if you're doing solo. You can't just, because you don't have a guest, so it's all on you for the marketing. So although you have this 100% creative freedom, you also have 100% responsibility on marketing. It's just something to keep in mind, because your guest, if you're a host and you're interviewing, your guest will typically share that interview because it gets them exposure, so it's a win-win. It's just something to keep in mind. So the work that you're going to have to put in is much more significant. Now, to make this a little easier, you should be interesting. So that means you should try to strive for being entertaining or educational or both, like entertainment or education. If you fall into either of those categories, that's going to help boost you up. People are going to check you out more. So if you don't fall in any of those categories, you got a bit of a roadblock here. Consider shorter clips. A shorter podcast episode, solo, can work. Although, when I think about audiobooks, it's like 7 to 10 hours plus of one person reading material in basically a monologue voice. So this is why I see the disruption happening in solo podcasting, because you are a solo person. So you can create 6 or 7 hours if you really want. I mean, that would be really unique, actually. But maybe you want to start off with shorter clips. Attention spans, they're waning. These days, people are not interested in sitting around for short or for long material unless it's extremely top-notch quality. So there are ways to go around it. As I mentioned, considering shorter clips, I think that's maybe at the get-go, but honestly, you have, like I said, 100% creative freedom. And honestly, I don't think anyone really knows where podcasting could potentially go. So try shorter, try longer, experiment. See what really resonates with your audience. Now, basically, because I see audiobooks as solo, and they've been around for a very long time, I do see the potential in solo podcasting becoming like that audiobook format. And, I'll go into like examples of successful solo podcasters in another clip, just to kind of broaden this out a bit. But I just want to make it clear that yes, it's possible. You can have a solo podcast, and you should do it if that's something you really want to look at. Now, varieties, the ways you could do it, well, you could talk about your day. You could do something entertaining like a show and tell. You could talk about topics that are interesting to you. Choose a niche, just talk about it. Could be like a diary, could be like a journal, a verbal journal. And the most important thing, if you want to make it successful, is to not worry so much about how many eyeballs you're getting right away. Let's be honest. You might have to create many episodes before anyone actually listens to you. Can you accept that? If you can, I think you're going to stick with it longer. But actually, the most important thing is that you should just enjoy it, because that's how you're actually going to get to the success point where you're feeling good about it and you actually enjoy doing it. And if you don't, well, then your audience is going to notice and they're not going to listen to you. Even if you're trying to be engaging, but you just don't feel it, well, then your audience is going to just tune out. So you have to be excited and passionate about this solo podcast, because that's going to help you a bit. Certainly educational can help, especially if you're boring, then educational could help you. But even if you're dull or whatnot, you can work on that. You can practice, and practice. And just keep putting out the content. It's super easy to upload your clip on like Apple and their podcasting platform. So many different resources out there to follow. Set up a website, easily set it up. So it's very doable. So yes, absolutely you can do a successful solo podcast. First, you have to just start. Okay, hopefully that helps. Best of luck.